we're going after Nathaniel Jeanson and the end game of where he's got all of these stupid charts look all identical, where they're picking up all of the critters that supposedly are all generated after the flood. This time goes after dogs. Creationist bites dogs. Isn't that exciting? Only one of the his reference bibliography this time actually on a 2005 paper Lindblad-Toh that he just cited peripherally where in the book. Other than that, absolutely nothing. But of course, the science is out there. Whoops, I'm getting really low on the connection. I may be roboting here. We'll to on our little no, well, it looked like it was halfway decent in here. I don't know. We'll see where we are. So long as it puts a signal on, at least we'll be able to put the links in on there. Anyway, the science didn't stop, and it turns out Daniel has a bunch of very recent papers. Jeanson's book came out in 2000, so this has been since then. On the genetic check in wild dogs that started up about 1.7 million years ago, and things like loss of digits and changes in carnassial teeth that took place over about 500,000 years after that. And then you've got a 2022 paper right out from our old, I should thank everyone for all of our supporters and close off our sharing here so we can get our big screen. There we go. Back again. A brand new paper from Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the comparative genomics of South American canids. They're like natural dogs in South America. When did they get there? Did they get there after the flood or what? Well, the standard evolutionary data that's in this paper is they're arriving somewhere between 3.9 and 3.5 million years ago. And they are tracing the various lineages of these South American dogs. Can all that be crammed in? The African dogs in the 2019 paper and the South American dogs in the 2022 paper into that little itty bitty box that Jeanson puts up? I have my doubts. Part two, I'll mention right off the bat, just in case our connections are, looks like pretty good connections at the moment. A 2021 Journal of Creation piece by John Matthews on the Jurassic Coast dry valleys on the Jurassic coast of England and glacial permafrost. It's a weird mixture of very old sources and a bunch of young Earth creationist stuff to suggest that somehow or other this is a problem for the standard geological model, but not any modern perspective, like a 2019 paper by Schettinger on the Britain aspect of it, which is in relation to how this stuff can be used potentially for waste storage, or another paper from 2019 by Batchelor, which is on comparable conditions in North America. In other words, there's a paleoclimate and stuff that's going on in here, independent of the data field. And you can compare and contrast John Matthews's little short piece at CMI with these more technical papers that are going into all the little fiddly bits on there. So that gets our stuff in the matter. We've got a kind of cooler temperature here in Spokane for the weekend, so we're down to the way down into like 80 degrees. Isn't that wonderful? So I haven't been quite so broiling as that, but we're supposed to be shooting back up into the high temperature realm. Busily constructing material that all of this material in relation to the kinds will be stuff that will be included into volume 2 of the Rocks Were There, because it all relates functionally to the whole Barrowman issue. And of course, there's quite a lot of material on the canids in the new book in relation to critters coming into the Americas supposedly after the flood, and how difficult that is to square with it. So all of that stuff will be in there. My brain right now is revving along, which I probably will be devoting to that for about the next month, to finish off volume 2, The Paralogs of Phileas Fogg, the second Fogg novel. I just finished off chapter 35, which means just 2 chapters to go, and those are relatively short ones, and that's all finished. I got all the previous text in up to chapter 35. That's all plugged into the master file that'll go over to Amazon, and I can get that out of the way. So fingers crossed in the next few weeks, we'll get all that finished. I'm quite pleased with how the end game and stuff is fitting in there. And And the next years, I'll be churning out the subsequent novels in backpacks opposite with the various books that Jackson and I will be doing beyond Volume 2 of The Rocks Were There. And there's a couple books down the line beyond there. And then another one that I may be able to dragoon Jackson into helping me on. I don't know, or I'll do it all my own, as the case may be. The Kultur book, and who knows else will occur to us along the way. So we're going to be reasonably busy for a reasonably good amount of time on here. As you may have noticed, there's all sorts of this stuff going on with like politics. President Trump and his various defenders are running amok, and I've also been kind of keeping always wary, looking at the degree which creationists are weighing in on this front. And it's kind of been curious that the usual gang find it. I don't think you're likely to see anything from AIG, ICR, the Discovery Institute, CMI, that will weigh in substantively there, even though a great many of their believers are definitely political and firmly believe in all of that. Kind of stay distant. Even Ken Ham will profess, oh gosh, we don't get involved in politics, even though they have very, very strident political opinions on here. So where things do intersect, though, is on policies regarding masks and vaccines. You get kind of a weird split, and this will be discussed in one of the future books that Jackson and I will be doing, on the bunch at AIG have tended to have a pro-science attitude, ironically enough, and we're not opposed to vaccines and all that kind of stuff. And the other ones have tended to just kind of be wiffle-waffle silence on the subject. So anybody out there who is aware of that stuff and whether or not there's been anything that slipped by my mind on that, let me know. That you can comment on it in the video comments, and that once it finalizes, or you can contact me on Twitter or do there as the case may be. But it's easy for things to be slipping along in the gigantic world of creationism to have stuff that I may not be aware of. And we'll find out. The newer, at least, I still got to dive down through the remainder of the Acts and Facts back issues to see how much of that fits in with the various stuff. So the plan will be for The Rocks Were There to be a fairly comprehensive guide. Anything that we didn't already discuss in the previous book, we'll be able to fold that stuff in. An awful lot of cosmological material, and there's all the material that relates to living dinosaurs and soft tissue and that kind of stuff, as well as the discussions of tetrapods, whale evolutions, and all of that, and of course baraminology matters. So it will be a delightful little compendium that will be probably about as big as Volume 1. We'll get on to that. We'll be diving into that, to the Vengeance, once I finish up Paralogs, Aphelios, Fog number 2, to get that off of my chest. So I don't see anything popping up in the chat overlay. I started a little bit earlier, so that's entirely understandable. We got about 8 minutes out of our way on here. Just to remind everybody about what Jeanson's doing in this book, and it's all basically the same shtick over and over and over and over and over again, are these charts. So I'll get the one for this one, the canids. There we go. And you can see cute little charts are in here. And they all are virtually identical. They're a bunch of little dots on a chart that is beginning from a 0 point, which he's very cagey about being specific about, but functionally it's when the flood happens. And then you can look to see 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. The scale varies from one thing to another, which presumably is deriving from the branch lineage lengths of the organisms he's dealing with. So canids are going to have a different branch lineage for extant species than you would be finding from rats and all the various other groups that he's dealing with, because they have varying numbers of species. That level, if he's anchoring it at a fixed arbitrary point in the past, and there's only a limited number of species, obviously, the more species there are, the more data field needs to be dealt with. And so the odds are that he's going to be expanding that outwards and having it spill later in time. He can get away with a newer group that, in effect, he's just compressing the actual data field and then dropping it down into a time frame. And because it has to anchor at the 0 point of the flood, that flow automatically runs off of that. Whereas they say, oh, hello, Ian. Hi. There we go. We got, well, you see, Ian can be coming on because he's like on the other side of the earth down there, where, because we all know the earth is shaped like a taco. So we can just wave at each other from across the edges on there. Hi, Ian. I was just trying to give a sense of what's going on with Nitson's funky little charts. And so anybody that wants to go farther than I have, that will have a better grasp of the genetic details that they want to dive in on. See, what you end up with in his charts, all of those little charts are assembled from a mass of generic data fields. I'll try to show you a picture of one of those here up in the corner. So you are genetic blocks that are pulled off of the scale sequencing coding from the NCBI data field and their ascension numbers. Now, I am not versed enough in that field to be able to draw on that kind of a situation, to be able to go into that. Somebody that actually does that for a living will be in a position to do that. But what each one of those data points would mean is those are mapping on little dots that he's putting up on these charts. But he's not exactly going out of his way to be clear as to why they're being assigned to the spots. Yes, flat Earth. Am I right? Remember, the Earth is really. See, I don't go for this standard flat Earth model. I think that's too bland. So I have been pushing for the idea that the Earth should be like a taco shell. You see, that brings us to my hemisphere. You see, and then of course figure out whether or not you want to put condiments and ground beef or something else in, and of course you sprinkle the cheese and all of that. And sauce, you know, we can have pouring volcanic stuff. You see, it's all very nice. And so at least in your science, you would at least have a nice meal out of it. Whereas what do you get from the normal flat Earth, where the only thing you got to play with is the ice wall? That's just like ice. You know, you got ice. That's not fun. So taco shell flavored Earth, I think, works out so much better from a condiments and eating point of view. You see, you can eat your way through the pseudoscience rather than just getting cold by it. So I'm going for the taco Earth. Okay, we'll see how that goes on that. Anyway, so anybody that wants to dive into that as something to build off of what I've been doing can deal with that if you can manage to get their book, because I don't think he's ever put that information out as accessible data field that you could get at online. So if you don't have the stupid print version in here that you'd have to manually mark down every one of these little data points, he's not making it easy to find this stuff. And if anybody knows an example of where he's published these data sets online, at least some of the stuff, the Answers in Genesis papers and that he's done actually did do that. So you could actually download the spreadsheet analyses that he used to construct, or sort of used to construct the charts that are in some of his papers, like the 2019 paper in that Dan Stern Cardinale went into. The problem is, even there, it doesn't really help it, because there have been people way above my pay grade, Joel Duff and Dan Stern Cardinale, who have both looked at that stuff, and they're scratching their heads trying to figure out how the hell he's constructing these charts. And the only one that I know of that definitely has some kind of a coherent relationship that you can see between data point and mapping is just the one chart that he has, which is basically criticizing the standard evolutionary model. All the other charts where he's playing around with the data field to show how the creation model works, they're so much better. I can't figure out how he's mapping what points onto what points. And he's using some kind of a filtering formula bit, but yet even there, I think he's just arbitrarily assigning numbers at times. And it's just Byzantine to try to figure out from his spreadsheets that are the ones that you can download, as to what the hell's going on. And he's not exactly explaining in great detail in that how he comes into that. So I know it'll be a shock to realize the idea that a creationist who comes up with cockamamie wrong ideas has a kind of Byzantine murky method of explaining how he came to the cockamamie ideas. So I know that'll be a shock. So, oh, anyway, I finished off the second lecture that I did. I can't remember whether I mentioned, I think I may have mentioned this the last episode, but I'll remind everybody about it, that it went off really, really well. And if anybody out there wants to have RJ as a lecturer and can pay my way there to see, unfortunately, I cannot go outside the United States at the moment. I don't have a damn passport. Well, I could go out of the United States, I suppose. I wouldn't be able to get back in again. I got to get a passport at some point because they're going to be switching over in later on to where you actually have to have some kind of an enhanced ID or a passport to be able to fly in a bloody airplane if I ever need to do that. And I would like to go to Canada once in a while. You know, they got neat stuff up in there. I know my niece likes to go up to like Victoria and that sort of thing. So in the future, you know, I might want to actually travel and do some miscellaneous things like that. And so I'll need that. So we'll worry about that as the case may go. But heck, maybe someday I'll be able to do a TED Talk. That'd be something fun to do. I could deliver the speech on the Tortugan methodology. The subject of the lectures that I was doing was on church and state separation issues. Oh, yes. What's beyond the ice wall? Well, maybe another ice wall, you know, White Walkers, that could possibly be it. You know, the Game of Thrones is out there, fire breathing dragons. There be dragons out there. That could account for it. I'm actually surprised the flat earthers haven't thought to connect some of these dots better, you know, make more of a dramatic narrative in that. I don't know whether there's any flat earther out there who has ever bothered to do a novel based upon the flat earth. Young earth creationists and to some extent intelligent designers have done novels depicting their philosophies of life. They're pretty dreck as far as the ones that I've been able to see. You know, they're tedious, but nevertheless they've given a stab at it. But I don't know that any flurfer has ever gone into that mode, and it would be kind of amusing to kind of see. Although there are science fiction people that have done fantasy context of completely weird worlds shaped like weird stuff and things on top of turtles and all the other stuff. And so, you know, it would seem an easy thing to do in a fictional context, but it's possible that flurfers really do lack enough imagination to be able to translate the mythologies into something that would be even marginally as entertaining as an old Pepsi Cola commercial. So I'm not sure about all of that. Yeah, it'd be fun to do a TED Talk or some equivalence of it. I'm available, kids. I think I've been very gratified in the times that I've been able to do lectures that they've been nicely done in terms of the condensed. My approach is very different from an awful lot of lecturers. I'll tell you this. Too many people, very bright people, are prone to show off the stuff. And so you get these things that are an hour or an hour and a half long, and it's just dripping with fabulous detail and stuff. And then there's a little teeny half hour in which they have a very quick little Q&A. I have a very different approach to it. And I think that most topics can be condensed to get the main talking points in 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending upon the structure. But half an hour is a good ballpark for a really big topic. 20 minutes is what I did for the church state thing. And then it's connect up with a presentation sheet or something that you can use as a springboard that will have a reference bibliography and all of that can act as a scaffolding. And then you spend the next hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on how long they're going to close the hall, Q&A, so that you're interacting and finding out how much of it's settling in and what ideas are in there, so you can end up presenting a much bigger presentation with that kind of approach and much more targeted to the interaction that you're having with the audience that you're in front of than if you just did the hour and a half and a little teeny 20-minute thing. So that's the approach that I've been dealing with. And so there's my plug that if anybody invites me to such a thing in a college environment, it can be in a secular group, It can be in any kind of little context. It can be structured as a debate if you wanted to have a discussion of such a thing, a philosophical end of it. There's an awful lot of things that could theoretically be done. I'm fairly versatile, and we'll see how that little goes. Anyway, so the connection's running amazingly good. I'm just absolutely delightful on it. And if there were any questions, Ian, that you have for me in the peanut gallery down in there, please fire away. It's a I am delighted at the fact. In fact, somebody came by my house, a friend who was saying, I can get you a job up at Home Depot and blah, 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 and all that. And I go, no. I am in the situation now, although I'm not rolling in money, I'm able to meet the bills and so forth and so on, little bit by little. And I don't have a huge amount of surplus to get on. Thanks to the speeches that I was doing, should be able to pick up some new glasses. I need glasses to get my lens up to speed on that. But the thing is that I am doing what I want to do and finding my bliss in the creativity that I can do between the science projects and the fiction projects. I get to use all of my brain in all of its manifestations. So I'm having a hell of a lot of fun doing it. And so I'm enjoying myself. And I suppose there'd be a lot of people that if they went into a retirement and they were all gloomy and doing absolutely nothing and their past is behind them. No, from my point of view, my future is still ahead. I'm just a little young pup of 70. And I'm planning on driving as much as possible and doing things right down to the time I keel over. And with a little luck, I can have about 20 or 30 or maybe even a little more years ahead to do that because I'm in good health and I have the longevity genes and all that kind of stuff that should do along in there. And I'm certainly not having my brain fall apart or atrophying because I'm sitting around trying to play golf and stupid little memory games on the computer or something like that. No, I'm writing and creating and doing all sorts of. Oh, Zmorph, hello, another person on the field there. We got a couple of them on here. So whether or not the fact that I have a pretty snarky sense of humor contributes to it, but I think certainly by being interested in things and following up on stuff, nobody has to prod me to investigate the things that I'm doing. It's not a thing where I'm working on the job and I'm doing a job and I'm creating the spreadsheets and things to meet the needs of somebody else and I don't give a shit about what's going on. All the work that you see in Evolution Slam Dunk and The Rocks Were There, and for that matter, Paralogs, are stuff. Invest stuff. Hello, somebody else there. Hello, we got three. We got a crowd in there now. I'm delighted. And the signal's running along, all blue stars. So I'm absolutely delighted. And so this is a kind of an idea that I could share in terms of anybody. Am I a late bloomer? Hell yes. Because I was working all the way up into just about age 60 when I finally had kicked out of the last job and rearranged. And so I'm now going on Social Security and blah, blah, blah. That I reconfigure myself and finally start doing what I would like to do, and something that I had kind of blundered along into doing, which was studying all of this creationism thing from a source method things. Paul the Skeptic. Oh, can't stay though. Off to work. Well, you can catch the show in a later point. So it's easy peasy on that. That's one of the advantage of this YouTube interweb thing is you can catch it at your leisure and say hi, make a comment and so forth on it. But to the idea about what anyone's doing is that this can be a really fun end game fascination. Everybody will have some area of interest that you don't have to be argued into to study. So it could be biological, it could be physics, it could be astronomy, it could be all sorts of things. And the logical analysis, history. I mean, technically speaking, I'm applying all the time my history usages because history and the scholarly method of how you evaluate sources and how you figure out what things likely did happen when you weren't there to see. So the whole idea behind The Rocks Were There and the notion of how you can infer stuff about the past without having been there, that's a thing historians have to do. That's what we do as a gig. So the idea that this could be applied so effortlessly to this other area where you got rocks and you got stars and you got goals and you got all sorts of neat stuff. The nice advantage that the scientists have that we historians don't labor under is that the rocks aren't pulling bullshit. They're just there. They're sitting there. You know, you may misread them, misunderstand them, but they're not duplicitous. But human beings, historical records can be propaganda and all of that. So in many respects, the toolkit that a historian has is more rigorous, more skeptical, precisely because it knows how people can wiggle the facts to make things appear to be so, because that's how we have to deal with stuff. So there we go. And these are the PhDs in this chat group just quadrupled. Yeah, I alas am only a BA in history. You see, I do not have a PhD like all of the gang at Institute for Creation Research, or even a doctorate on the level of Kent Hovind from Patriot University. I only have a lowly BA from an actual university. And hopefully I can make use out of it. It's so ironic, the people who do have accreditation that have screwed it. I mean, you know, should they ask for their money back? This clearly didn't take. You know, people who have had very bright minds, the late Philip Jeanson, the intelligent design guy, Robert Carter, and the Nathaniel Jeanson crowd, and all that, with their actual genetic degrees from, by and large, regular, real colleges. Andrew Snelling, the geologist, and all of that. And yet you look and see how they fritter away their time. A lot of them, it's almost like a career ender. Is Ann Gager ever going to be doing anything in the regular sciences now? It's all going to be intelligent design material. Michael Behe's in that mode. Gunter Beckley is likely to be sliding into that mode. He may publish a few more papers before he fades away. Supposedly, here's one that again, anybody, yeah, BA already, you know more than all of you. Yes, well, I'll tell you one thing. I will say this. Most of what I know today, I didn't know when I was coming out of college, because the vast majority of the data field that's now knocking around in my head, I have acquired in the last 20 years. And I graduated from college in 1974. So that's been a time. And it's in part because, and I was telling the visitors, Brazil and various other people that were at this lecture that I gave last week, that they're all relatively young. They were running pretty much in the 35 to 40 range, and a few that were younger and a few that were older, but that was the larger group. And I was telling them how staggeringly honored and delighted I am to be in the century I'm in, because the accessibility that we have to do information, I can guarantee you, I could not have done any of these books in terms of the background research that I needed to do, even for the fiction, if I didn't have access to so much of this stuff online, and it's effortless with mouse clicks and at no cost to boot, that I could just download things freebie. And so from a scholar's point of view, I'm going, candy store, wow. And that also means, oh yes, Vesta, you know, I only have a double PhD. Well, boy, what are you doing frittering away your time there, Vesta? I mean, what are you going to manage to pull off? You're two way ahead of me already. And so everybody can make use of the talents and skills they have. I'm getting your bachelor's in science, getting my BA in history. I'll give you a little secret, that the reason why I never ended up getting a master's degree is because I was a Velikovskyan, which, for those of you who know anything about Immanuel Velikovsky, is like, what? And in the course of my thinking about doing a thesis on the Velikovsky phenomenon at the time for a master's thesis, I realized it was crap. And I just had a thing where I didn't really have a fallback as to what I wanted to do as another interest. And so I went off in a different direction. And so eventually, yes, there we go. Yes, you get like the, is there like a doctorate of the month club or something that you could belong to, where you could get like diploma mill stuff, you know, that arrive like the old CDs, and you belong to a house CD club. and pointless, but it could be a moneymaker. So if you have no ethics whatsoever, which means you might be a Trumpist, then, you know, maybe so they could go that route. A fact-check, the religious apologist, somebody was commenting on Twitter to think about the theology set that he was having. And I think he charged like $199 thing, and I'm going, he charges for this stuff? Wow, nice work if you can get it, and you can get it if you like. Anyway, so all of that stuff for the advantages of looking into all the world, whether it's fiction or nonfiction framework. Wow, we are in a fun spot to deal with. In fact, my poor PC is sending me alerts to say that no longer Windows 8 is not going to be supported after like January of next year. I'm going to have to actually shell out and buy a completely new computer and upgrade to the 11 because I suspect this older platform that I have probably won't run anything more recent anyway, so I'll just have to shell out and buy new. Unfortunately, computer costs are such in that, you know, I should be able to probably get all that swung there. Either that'll be people up for some more, do a fund me for that end of it. But anyway, the laptop that I'm using is Scientist Mel. She gave this to me as a free gift, because she was frustrated with the fact that my videos were kind of glitching up, so she got this for me. And so thank you, Scientist Mel. The old RJ has hopefully made as good use of it as possible, and we keep on going on these little things. But the lesson is to do things that you love doing, to have fun with it. If it's a labor and you just are feeling depressed after you're doing it, that's not fun. You shouldn't be doing that. So the idea of a retired hobby that can be something that you can slide into, the contributing something at the same time, because this is my view, I'm contributing something as well, a delightful, fun time of it, keeping my mind all at the same time, keeping energetic. I mean, wow, that's absolutely delightful. And I can guarantee you, and I'm sure with your BSC from 1974 in the same body. Hi, Lavender Lady. How are you? You're hanging, kid. I'm so glad to see that. Yeah. Give them hell and never give up till the last, even 5 minutes after that. Just to, so they can't F them if they can't take a joke, as Bette Midler once said. But anyway, all of those techniques are stuff that any my age could look forward to. I could never envisage in 1974, when I was just coming out of college, the world that I would be living in now as what I'm doing now. The idea that in 2022, I would be on a TV screen that is visible to everyone on the planet that wants to look at it, that I'm communicating with all sorts around the world, including in the other side of the planet, like Ian, and I've even got a little trickle of money coming in, people who say, go for it. And we're about to launch our spacecraft to test the thing, to be able to put man back on the moon. Well, and that we have images of black holes and planets around star systems and all kinds of things and electronic things that I can find, so I can find out pictures of 19th century oaks and details on geology and technical papers. It's whole books downloadable in the matter of 15 or so. Slow connection is amazing, astonishing. And I've got behind me classical music that I've collected for years that no emperor had access to, even in 1900, if they wanted to. Who could say, play me Mahler's Ninth Symphony? And they would go, who? Even if they knew about him, how do they going to go for this, you know? And I can just pluck it out and do it. So everybody, Snake was right. Another one in there. So this is basically a pep talk about how to enjoy it yourself. Don't let anybody wear you down. Find techniques and things that are useful. I have fun applying the methods approach when I'm on Twitter. And anybody who follows me on Twitter sees, there's RJ asking for sources again. I ask politicians for that. I have fun on that one, particularly because if politicians who are in Congress, Senate, news bulletin, they're my employee. They work for me. I'm one of their employers. So if you think I don't have a right to ask them about that, you don't quite understand how that paycheck thing works and all of that. So anybody, Ian down there in south of the equator, same thing in your country, anybody anywhere, hold your people to account on that. And also news media, get news media to ask source methods questions more, or like any, because what you get is, and I've mentioned this before, it's worth mentioning it again, you have a problem because there's the triple tier of thought. The positions they hold, whether or not pay any attention to data flow or not, a lot don't, or pretend to, or offer false versions of it. And then the source methods as to, well, where did you get the information from that you're relying on for your opinion up here? And it's that source method angle that almost never gets asked. I see that even on like NPR approaches. It's still, and you find this with or any kind of context, and then certainly with the realm of debates. How many debates have you ever seen that are focused on a source methods approach to it? I always try to make the debates that I've been in into a source methods issue. I did it, or tried to, with Kent Hovind. And Ian has tried to do that. Anybody, I strongly recommend that it's always operating to where if you're having a debate with somebody on a issue, substantive issue, factual issue, to not only pay attention to the data floor, which is where Aaron Raw and that type will tend to focus, but also underneath it, which is where are they getting their source data from and how do they go about fact checking it? Because I will contend that in order to believe something that is really, really, really not true, not a legitimate difference of opinion where the data field is sufficiently uncertain that you can't resolve the issue, as some things in advanced physics and certain things in the development of biological issues inevitably are. But something that like is really not true, like the shape of the Earth not being a taco, or that the Earth is not only 6,000 years old, or whatever, that people who believe that have a mind that's screwing up at that source methods level. They won't ever to the stupid belief unless they did that, and that they are relying on an extremely narrow data field. I'm measuring it in tip projects, so into creationism, but you can theoretically do that with any topic: flat Earth, Holocaust denial, people who think we didn't land on the moon, people who are anti-vax, people who are climate deniers, lots of very often there's an overlapping set for an awful lot of these groups, which is another matter to deal with who the demographics are and what special interests are involved and what groups are cherry picking which information and who connects up with who, and more importantly, are they connecting up with politicals? And there we're getting into something that moves from the realm of purely academic to that kind of that. So one of the books that Jackson and I will be doing later on is the whole book, Conspiracy Thinking, which will involve a taxonomic analysis of levels involved, either how stupid is it versus its effects are. And so something like flat Earth is incredibly stupid, the Mount Olympusism, but it is almost irrelevant to society. Virtually nobody is a flat earther who has influence on anybody. They're not heads of state, they're not in Congress, not in anything. Move down the notch to something like anti-vaxxers or climate deniers. Holy moly, there's a bunch of them in government. And they are making stupid decisions based upon Tortugan brain methods. That means that shouldn't we have fewer Tortugans in government? Isn't it unwise to have a Tortugan in positions of power? Because even if they have accidentally mapped onto things that are true, won't there be a risk that they can run off the rails and do incredibly stupid things without even batting an eyelash? That's where it matters. So media and news and the questions that are asked of politicians on these things, all of that should be filtering back into that. And you can hopefully make an input in terms of the equivalent of letters to the editor. If you know reporters and other people that are actually activists in the thing, get them onto the methods approach. That's all part of the thing. So there's the long rambling context rant that's underlying all of the things, why I've been doing the research that I have all of the years. And as my tools have gotten better, I have access to much more analytical tools, the spreadsheet and keeping stuff, to where now I can tell people just exactly how many creationists there are. I track several, almost 2,700 or so that have produced about 10 or 11,000 pieces of information papers, of which most of that's from the Young Earth Creationist camp. And overall, they've cited about 6,000 or so sources, which is only reflecting about 10 to 20% of the data field. In other words, it's absolutely inconsequential. So I have to guess at their interaction with a larger data field. I can measure it. In principle, that same technique can be done by anybody regarding any field. You could do, as that kind of mind is interested on it, can do that with climate science denialism. That's a business, a fun little area. In some respects, it'll be a smaller field, although you do see Oregon Project, which is a bunch of climate science deniers that some of them are nutballs. If you looked at some of the names on there, it's a chunk of them are just gibberish names and hoaxers that have come on there to troll. Others are like meteorologists or people that are from fields having no connection whatsoever to climatology. And so why are they on this list? It's complicated. It's a counterpart in some respects to the Discovery Institute descent Darwin thing. There's more names on Planet Island than there are on the Discovery Institute thing. But anybody that can start to analyze who's on it, what their credentials are, what have they printed, what have they cited, what amounts, the older the work is, what's the follow-up. The important lesson to remember on any of those, that the older the thing they're citing, the more has the following. One has a lot of then find out, okay, work fared, where has it progressed, why have they not discussed this later work? That's all in creation. I think you'll find any of these venues that bump into data field in the way that they do. You that over in Flat Earth, because that's often cloud kook. Any area, the vaccine issues and mask usage and all that, pandemic stuff. Now you're knee deep in virology, you're knee deep in the way viruses and microorganisms work, and now you about how you test that out, what sort of the regimens are done, connecting up to businesses that are in the business of being vaccines and the like. So now that's connecting up to big pharma. So there's the political aspects in that, and there's regulations, and so there's a whole nexus of research areas that you'd need to get together as part of the data field to reflect that, in the same way that one does to look at any other areas. So, breaking up badly. Okay, yeah, it's bouncing along in here. We've gone about 43 minutes. That worked out pretty well. Once this is finalized, again, I'll be putting all the links in on there, and you will have the joys of learning about Jurassic permafrost and all the little doggies. And so anyway, everybody stay safe, stay cool if you can. We're supposed to be shooting back in the 90s here, and then there's heat waves all over the place. So and rivers are drying up in China and Europe and all that. There isn't a problem with climate change. Anyway, stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you next week. And don't expect